Hanover, 1924. The Lena River slowly carries its murky waters through a city trying to forget the horrors of World War I, but the river refuses to keep its secrets. Children playing on the banks discover a strange object. It's not a piece of driftwood or a stone. It's a human skull, stripped of flesh, frighteningly white. Soon a second, a fifth, a 10th are found. Hundreds of bone fragments in all. The city descends into paranoia. Hanover understands. A monster lives among them. But no one could imagine that this monster is a trusted friend of the police, a good uncle who greets neighbors every day and sells cheap meat on the corner. Today we will follow in the footsteps of Fritz Haarmann, a man who turned his life into a massacre and death into a profitable business. Evil doesn't arise in a vacuum, it grows in the shadows. Fritz Haarmann was born in 1879 into a family where violence was the only language. His father, Rote Haarmann, nicknamed Gloomy Ollie, was a railroad stoker. A man of steel and malice, he hated his youngest son. Why? Because Fritz was different. While his peers played soldier, Fritz stayed home with his mother. He helped her sew, clean, and cook. He was a mama's boy, painfully attached to the woman who was the only shield from his father's tyranny. Rote despised Fritz, calling him effeminate and beating him at the slightest provocation. This dichotomy, a cruel, oppressive father and a weak, loving mother, created a dangerous fracture in the child's mind. At 16, Fritz was admitted to a psychiatric hospital for the first time. The diagnosis? Child sexual abuse. But the doctors made their first mistake. They declared him feeble-minded, but not dangerous. He was released. Fritz struggled to become a man in his father's eyes. He joined the army. The uniform, the discipline, the power. He likes it. But his psyche can't handle the drill. He starts having seizures. He's discharged. Now he's a complete outcast. A man without a profession, without a future, but with a huge void inside that needs to be filled. Hanover, 1924. The Line River slowly carries its murky waters through a city trying to forget the horrors of World War I. But the river refuses to keep its secrets. Children playing on the banks discover a strange object. It's not a piece of driftwood or a stone. It's a human skull, stripped of flesh, frighteningly white. Post-war Hanover became the perfect backdrop for a nightmare. Thousands of street children roamed the train stations. Haarmann found his niche. He became a police informant. Imagine, a maniac with a police badge and the right to detain people. Everyone knew him. Uncle Fritz. He approached frightened teenagers on the platform. He offered food and shelter in his small room on Rote Reihe Street. The children trusted him because the police shook his hand. But Haarmann wasn't alone. In 1919, Grans appeared in his life, a young, handsome man with a cold gaze. It was a strange and terrifying alliance. If Haarmann was a beast driven by his instincts, then Grans, according to many historians, was a calculating puppeteer. Witnesses recalled, Grans could simply point to a nice jacket or new shoes from some young man at the train station, and it would be a death sentence. Haarmann killed to please his lover. Grans would coldly sell the belongings of the murdered boys, and with the proceeds, they would buy themselves delicacies. It was Grans who brought an element of macabre commercialism to these murders. But in his apartment, hospitality turned to hell. Haarmann didn't use knives or garrots to kill. His method was the vampire bite. In a fit of madness, he would gnaw off his victims' Adam's apples. Then came the most horrific stage. Haarmann was a former butcher. He professionally dismembered bodies in his tiny kitchen. Apartment number 4 was tiny, but its layout made for the perfect trap. Haarmann's neighbor, Frau Engel, later testified, leaving the courtroom in a deathly silence. She complained of hearing strange rhythmic tap-tap-tap sounds at night, as if someone was chopping wood right on the kitchen table. When she asked Fritz about it, He smiled and replied that he was chopping meat for sale. But there was also the smell, a heavy, sweetish odor of decay, which Haarmann tried to mask with the strong aroma of cheap cologne and tobacco smoke. He smoked one cigar after another, creating a thick curtain in the closet that hid the blood spatter on the walls. Neighbors heard the sound of an axe and the rush of water at night, but in those days, people were accustomed to not asking unnecessary questions, especially when the good neighbor, Haarmann, offered to buy fresh meat from him at a surprisingly low price. Germany was starving. Haarmann became a notorious figure on the Hanover black market. He was called a lucky dealer. He sold not only raw meat, but also, rumor has it, prepared homemade pies and canned goods. Interrogation tapes survive in which customers confessed that Haarmann's meat was strangely white and very tender, not at all like beef or horse meat. In Hanover, an urban legend still persists about a song children sang in those years. Wait a little longer. Soon Haarmann will come to you with a knife. He will make a delicious sausage out of you. This isn't just folklore, it's a cry of horror from a city that realized it had eaten its own children. Did he trade in human flesh? The court never officially proved this, to avoid causing mass insanity in the city, but the rumors were relentless. Hanover was eating the flesh of its missing children. Why wasn't he caught sooner? The answer lies in the Hanover police archives. Haarmann was such a useful informant that when the parents of missing boys pointed him out, detectives simply laughed in their faces. One officer even allowed Haarmann to use his office to interrogate suspicious persons. In effect, the police themselves delivered the victims to the executioner, providing him with a perfect alibi. The end came in 1924. The number of bones in the Leine River became impossible to ignore. Under public pressure, the police finally searched the apartment of their valuable agent. They found layers of dried blood behind the wallpaper. The missing boys' clothes were in the trunks. Haarmann didn't even try to hide it all. He believed in his invulnerability. At the trial, he acted like a rock star of the era. He smoked cigars, joked, detailed his atrocities, and claimed he was simply helping unfortunate children find peace. He was found guilty of 24 murders, although the actual number could have been twice as high. Haarmann was defiant. When presented with the skulls found in the river, he began sorting them like a schoolteacher, correcting the prosecutor. No, this one isn't mine, but this one is definitely mine. I remember his teeth. He demanded that only the finest tobacco and coffee be brought to his cell, declaring that an artist of his caliber deserved special treatment before the final act. April 15th, 1925. Morning. Hanover prison. Haarmann walks to the guillotine with his head held high. His final request, a cup of coffee and a good cigar. The blade's stroke ends the life of Europe's most feared man. Haarmann's story didn't end with his death. His head was severed from his body and placed in a jar of formaldehyde. For decades, scientists peered into those dead eyes, searching for the evil gene. They searched for tumors, brain deformities, any excuse that a person could be like this. They found nothing. His brain was completely normal. Haarmann's head was cremated and buried in an unmarked grave only in 2014. But his shadow still haunts Hanover. He became the prototype for Fritz Lang's film M and inspired hundreds of books and songs. His story is a reminder. Monsters don't come from the woods. They live in the apartment next door, smile at us when we meet, and wear the mask of the most ordinary, good neighbor. Sleep well, if you can.